All right, now on to our keynote. Our wonderful governor is here. So I want to say a few things before he comes out. You know, it's said that Super Bowls and World Series are won in the off season. And this past year and a half, as we'd call maybe the legislature's off season, Governor Greg Abbott has laid the groundwork for conservative victories in this session. Coming off of the past session, which we passed items including constitutional carry, protections for the unborn, and election integrity measures, Governor Abbott could have rested on his laurels. Instead, he decided that this was the year. This session was the year to empower parents, and that he would do everything within his power to open up educational options for every Texas child. And he hasn't backed down on that issue or any other. In fact, he's been touring the state with our very own Mandy Drogan, and it will be, I believe, in Amarillo tomorrow. But thanks to Governor Abbott's leadership, Texas is also continuing to work to defend our U.S. border, even though the federal government abdicates its responsibilities there. And Governor Abbott has pledged to enact the biggest property tax relief package in the history of the state. Governor Abbott, of course, was elected as governor in 2014 and was reelected this past November. Prior to that, he served as a judge on the Texas Supreme Court and, of course, as our very own Attorney General. And under Governor Abbott's conservative stewardship, the Texas economy has expanded to nearly $2 trillion as the Lone Star State continues to break all records for total jobs, with more Texans working than at any point in the state's history. Governor Abbott, we look forward to working with you and your team and acting together to be sure that to be the answer that our founders intended. So ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming the 48th Governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott. I'll say that for
Thank you very much. And Greg, thank you for the very kind introduction. And how about Richard Johnson? And one thing that Greg mentioned was Mandy Drogan. And Mandy, there she is right there. Good to see you again. It's been like less than 12 hours since I saw you last. So as I will cover in some detail here in a second, I really appreciate TPPF for collaborating with me and especially Mandy as we crisscross the state of Texas to educate our fellow Texans about the fact that school choice is about one word: freedom. People deserve the freedom to choose the school that's best for their child. But before I do that, I want to talk about something else real quick. And it's a concept that really applies to what's going on with school choice in Texas, but applies to a lot of other topics as well. It's this concept that sometimes in life, what you do is you plant a seed. And after you plant the seed, you need to fertilize it and water it. And sometimes it takes a while for it to sprout and then grow and then turn into a fruit-bearing plant or tree. Same thing applies with policy ideas. And reference was made earlier that it may have been 30 years, I don't know how many years, people have been working in the state of Texas to try to achieve universal school choice. It's been a while. There have been many people who were part of that process of planting the seed and fertilizing it and watering it and leading to it grow to where it may be now, or it's going to bear fruit. The same is true about an issue that I spoke to TPPF about 8 years ago. 8 years ago at a conference just like this, I cast a vision at TPPF for broad-based regulation reduction. Some of that was achieved in the sessions after me talking about that at TPPF, such as the speeding of the permitting process, the reducing of business licensing requirements. And then also we targeted reining in local regulations that were bad for business and equally bad for individual liberty. Things like overriding local city fracking bans, overriding the Uber and Lyft regulations here in Austin, Texas, overriding bans on using natural gas hookups for appliances. But the fact is this: despite those gains, our overarching vision of broad-based regulation reduction has not yet been realized in Texas. 8 years ago, I talked about the challenges that we would face if we did not achieve this broad-based goal. I talked about how unchecked overregulation by cities could turn the Texas miracle into a California-sized nightmare. I said that Texas was turning into a patchwork of bans, rules, and regulations. And I cast a vision where individual liberties are not bound by city limit signs. Now, 8 years after talking about that at TPPF, that vision might just be realized this legislative session. Representative Burrows and Senator Creighton are spearheading that effort with the Regulatory Consistency Act. Cities that pass regulations based on anti-capitalistic principles are contrary to Texas values. Things like banning gas-powered lawnmowers, banning natural gas hookups in homes, ordinances directly contravening laws passed by the Texas legislature. We're tired of it. If local officials want to shape state policy, they should run for the state legislature, not for city council. So I'm looking forward to working with the House and the Senate to turn that bill into law. Under that law, if Texas regulates an issue, then cities cannot impose a contrary regulation. This will prevent a patchwork regulation regime that would otherwise make it hard to do business in Texas. This will protect capitalism and prevent local policies that are hostile to businesses. Now, in addition to that, kind of as you've heard from Greg already, there is a full array of extraordinary policy issues that will turn into policy wins this session. Yes, we are going to pass the largest property tax cut ever in the history of this state. The nuance that also must be achieved is to make sure that what we pass provides lasting property tax relief. And Texas will continue to do more than any state has ever done in the history of the United States of America to secure our border. One of the things that's a consequence of the border is the way that fentanyl has been pouring across our border. The Texas Department of Public Safety has seized enough fentanyl that would be enough to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. That's one reason why I declared and directed that Mexican drug cartels are terrorist organizations, authorizing Texas DPS to go after their assets here in Texas. But also why I'm seeking to classify fentanyl poisonings as poisonings and allow it to be prosecuted as murders so we can stop people who are lacing fentanyl onto drugs, killing people here in Texas. Speaking of killing people here in Texas, we must also end the revolving door bail policies that we see in places like Harris County, Texas, that are killing Texans in our communities. But most importantly, as you've heard already, one thing that I both campaigned on, but am now running a separate campaign, and that is to achieve the most consequential policy victory this session, and that is to empower every parent with the right to choose the school and education option that is best for their child. So Mandy and I have been crisscrossing the state, speaking to packed, sold-out crowds at high school gyms across the state. We've been in Corpus Christi, Conroe, Corsicana, Temple. We're going to Amarillo tomorrow, and we have a slate for the next few weeks. We're going to crisscross the state. And Mandy will tell you, this is getting extraordinary support, extraordinary passion. We all know the way that parents are fed up with not having the right or the ability to be in charge of educating their child. And we're able to tap into that passion that those parents have and translate that into support for this issue. But let me provide a context. Because listen, the reality is as much as we're going to be advancing parental empowerment, we also need to recognize that public schools, they really do play a vital role in our state. Many of the public schools we have in the state of Texas are excellent. In fact, Texas ranks #1 in the United States for the most blue ribbon schools. We have one of the best high school graduation rates of all the states in the country. And also, with the help of members of the Texas legislature, I have authorized more funding for public schools than any other governor in the history of Texas. I've authorized more funding for teacher pay raises than any other governor in Texas history. And per student funding is at an all-time high. But one thing that I know that people in this room understand and agree with, and that is it would be wrong to say that more money always leads to better results. When I grew up in the towns of Longview and Duncanville, where I attended public schools, we were taught the basics: reading, writing, math, and science. But maybe more importantly than that, we were inspired by our country's founding and how it stands apart from the rest of the world as the beacon for opportunity and liberty. The fact of the matter is, many of our children today are not educated the same way that we were. We heard this last night in a story that the principal for the elementary school of the school that we were at told a story why she formerly was at a public school and left that public school to go to the private school that we visited last night. She said that one of the catalysts was a history teacher at the school, public school that she left, was using his position to teach kids to disrespect the flag of the United States of America. Let me tell you something. We will not use taxpayer dollars to teach our kids to hate our country or to disrespect our flag. I've heard far too many stories over the past year from parents who echo exactly what that principal was talking to us about last night. But also in the aftermath of COVID, you've heard countless stories of parents who are angry about having the children forced to wear masks in school, seeing the children forced to learn online, virtually, at home, in front of their own parents and in front of their parents' eyes, watching their child fall behind. Or stories like this one that occurred yesterday in Conroe, where we were yesterday. A mother in Conroe said that she was frustrated about the Conroe Independent School District. She says that her son with autism is being set up to fail by the Conroe ISD. And she says something I'm going to quote, that I hear the exact same words from almost every parent across the state. What this mom said is this: no one will fight for her kids like she will. That's the underlying premise about education freedom. No one loves a child as much as a parent does. No one knows better what is in their own child's best interest than does their parents. And other parents, are even more angry about woke agendas being forced on their children in schools. Let's be clear. Our schools are for education, not indoctrination. We must end woke practices being taught in our schools. We need to reform curriculum, get kids back to the basics of learning. But most importantly, we must empower parents. The way to do that is with school choice through state-funded education savings accounts. We've already seen them work in other states. In a way, we've also seen them work in the state of Texas. I created education savings accounts for special needs students, and it worked so well. A supermajority of the Texas House and Senate not only supported it and codified it, they're now seeking to add money to that program. Now what we need to do this session is to expand that program to provide every parent with the ability to choose the best education option for their child. Now, some people criticize this, mostly educrats across the state of Texas, and they use the exact same arguments that have been used for decades now. They say that school choice will defund schools and it will erode high school football in our communities on Friday nights. We have proof that that is a false argument. Seriously, we got to be able to convey this to members of the legislature, most importantly. The proof is this. That exact same argument was used 20 years ago as Texas began the charter school program process. If we started charter schools, it would close down public schools, it would defund public schools, and it would end high school football in the state of Texas. We now have more than 350,000 students in charter schools across the state of Texas. Not a single Texas school has closed or been defunded because of charter schools. And I can tell you for a fact, high school football is better than it's ever been in Texas history. I know that high school football is better because my high school team won the state championship in football this year. They also argue that because of school choice, it will lead to schools, public schools being destroyed. As I pointed out earlier, the success that we've seen in the other states that have implemented debunks that theory about the dire warnings about schools being destroyed. And importantly, this cannot be overemphasized enough. Because I know from my own conversations with members of the legislature in the past, they say, listen, I would support school choice, but the fact of the matter is people in my district are against it. And this comes mostly from rural areas. That simply is not true. The fact of the matter is that maybe some educators in their district are against it. But we know for a fact, both from polling data as well as the referendum that was on the ballot, that especially in rural areas in the state of Texas, this is overwhelmingly supported. It's overwhelmingly supported by majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Of Republicans, it's supported by more than 80% of Republicans, including in rural Texas. This is supported by majorities of Black, white, Hispanic, as well as Asian Americans. And it's supported by majorities in urban areas, suburban areas, and yes, in rural Texas. Also, if you hear these stories about some of the woke ideology taking place, some people may suggest, well, yeah, that may happen in Houston or Dallas, but it's not happening here in rural Texas. Oh, yes. So we were in the conservative bastion of Conroe, Texas last night. You just think where you're from may be conservative. Go to Conroe. And one of the parents there who provided a testimonial was talking about the reason why he chose that private school for his family, and it was because this woke agenda about the sexuality of kids in school, about the wokeism in school, was taking place right there in one of the most conservative small town areas in the entire state. And I've heard even worse stories about even smaller rural areas south of Lufkin. And so this can happen to any school, anywhere, and no parent should be confined to having to force the child to go to a school that's subject to this type of education. So, what is our goal for education in Texas? What is our goal for education in Texas? And I'm looking around the room, and candidly, I see a former legislator, our great former senator who is now the Secretary of State of Texas, Jay Nelson, is right here. This is a question to all of us, and you might imagine it's a rhetorical question I'm going to come back and answer, but what is our goal? Every legislator needs to think about this. It seems the way that education policy is approached in the state of Texas is that our goal is to provide more funding for education. That seems to be the demand that we hear, and it seems to be the solution that's provided. That's not a goal. That's a strategy. If you're a Texan, you know our goal is one thing. Let me ask you what our goal is for business, jobs, and the economy. You know what our goal is. Our goal is to be number one. And you know what we've been every year that I've been governor? Texas has been number one in America as the number one state for jobs and the economy. There's only one way to ensure that you will never be number one at something, and that's to never aspire to be number one. If you do not aspire to be the best, one thing I can guarantee you, you're not going to be the best. I think it's time for Texas to recalibrate. Texas needs to set a goal, an aspiration, something that's clear and tangible and unequivocal, something that may seem bold, but is proven to be achievable. Texas must set our sights on being ranked number one in the United States for the best education system in the entire country. I can prove to you, for one, this is attainable, but also for another, that the best pathway to attain it is through school choice. Let's go back 2 decades, 2002, in Florida. When Florida in 2002 first adopted this school choice plan, especially focusing on low-income families. At that time, children from low-income families in Florida ranked 33rd in the nation for national testing results. Today, after 20 years of school choice in Florida, after perfecting their system for school choice, the low-income students in Florida now rank number one in the United States of America for national testing results. School choice not only improves the outcomes for students who go down the pathway of school choice, it also improves the outcomes for the public school systems in the entire state where that school choice operation takes place. If we aspire to be number one, school choice is the pathway to get us to that lofty position. 187 years after Texas was founded. It's never been a better time to be a Texan. Conservative policies have led Texas to be the economic juggernaut of the entire country. and this session, we will continue to implement even more conservative policies to ensure that Texas remains the leader of this nation, an unflinching force in this world, expanding opportunity for absolutely everybody. Thank you all. God bless you all. And God bless the great state of Texas. Thank you, man. Thank you all. So I have one more official duty here today. We had such a great speaker who preceded me, and that's Richard Johnson. And for those who do not know, I appointed Richard Johnson to be a member of the Board of Regents at Texas Southern University. And I brought with me a proclamation to give to him, recognizing this historic moment for him as well as for Texas Southern University. Richard, come on up. Oh, here you are. Good to see you, man.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Can I take a picture with you?
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you so much, brother.